Senate Democratic Caucus meeting. It's Tuesday, It's Tuesday, April 9th, and we are here in the lounge, and we have lots to discuss today. I'm cognizant of some of our members having to leave, so I want to get to them first. I just want to say thank you, Dick Mazza, for an amazing tenure of service to the state. We are going to be looking for. You will never be able to be replaced, but we are going to have to find a new third member. So to that end, one of my first announcements is next week at this meeting, we will be hearing from our candidates for third member. We already have one. If anyone else is interested in running, please let me know by Friday. And then on Tuesday, we're asking everyone to present, and then we will vote on third member on Tuesday, week from today. The third thing I'd really like to say, other than thank you to Dick Mazza, which there'll be more on that, but I just want to say we have put out into the world that we are looking for a part-time Senate Democratic Caucus director, beginning ASAP. If any of you have opportunities to promote that and get that out in terms of marketing and advertising it in our world, in our orbits, where somebody might see it who might be interested, I would appreciate if you'd let me know afterwards. I'm happy to send the link from the Vermont Democratic Party out to all of us. And so today, without further ado, we have managed to make it through crossover. All the House bills are mostly to the Senate, and our bills are off to the House. So it is time for us to hear from our chairs what some of the priorities are that we're dealing with that have come to us from the House. And I know Jane and Keisha have to leave for a meeting, and I think Andy also. So let us start with maybe that's part of the room. Is there a second mic? Is this mic on too? And so if you guys could come forward and Keisha, why don't we start with you and then to Andy?
And then Senator Kitchell.
And then Senator Kitchell.
Okay. Yeah, we can't live without Senator Kitchell anyway. So good afternoon, everybody. We are actually leaving to talk about, I think, our biggest priority of the session in our committee, housing. You may have seen that the House sent us a very large spending package on housing. That is a budgetary matter. So, Senator Kitchell does a great job being in touch with the chairs about our, the universe we're living in and how to spend the money most appropriately and wisely. But I will say, as one of the faces of this, trying to solve the housing crisis, that I do not think it's a money issue this year. We just put over $500,000 into the construction of new housing, $500 million. Oh, yeah, $500,000 is the cost of a house right now. So we put over $500 million in the last 2 years into construction of housing. We haven't seen almost half of the housing crisis solved. So our regulatory reform is really critical in building housing at a cheaper rate. When we build housing as a state, it's extremely expensive, except the VHIP program, which a lot of us love. But we're going to be talking about the affordable ways we can stay in partnership as government. But really, our regulatory reform piece is much more important to us. And we don't have the money to spend $130, $150 million on housing. That's a finance committee question as well. The other big priority, we just voted out the Crown Act. So we have 11 other bills that are, not necessarily must pass, but some, they're starting to hit the floor. Our other big priority is likely to be data privacy, just in terms of how much time it's going to take. You are probably hearing on all sides of this issue. I just started getting form letters saying, don't weaken this so that, tech companies and data brokers can sell and do whatever they want with my data. We're not touching that piece. That, in fact, I think we're strengthening the bill so that if there's a private right of action or litigation, it actually focuses on those who buy and sell data as their main source of revenue. But the bill that came to us from the House says that if you are a business or a nonprofit that serve 6,000 or more people in the state, you will come under a private right of action if you do not follow this multi-step complicated data privacy process and assessment. I will say, for whatever reason, the lots of different reasons for different things, but the House Commerce Committee did not take testimony from any Vermont businesses. And we are now hearing from an onslaught of Vermont businesses that don't deal in the world of data privacy, that this is a huge new requirement for them that could land them in court with a troll of a lawyer from somewhere else. And they have no idea how to even follow this bill. So the bill will significantly need to change in our committee before it hits the floor. So you're going to hear all kinds of things about what we're doing, but I don't see it as gutting the bill. I see it as taking a really big step forward. You still have the right to ask for deletion of your information. You still have some control over your data, but we can't take the step that the House wants us to take, which I don't think was advised and informed by Vermont businesses. It was a lot of, let's see how much better our bill can be than New Hampshire or Delaware or whatever. And, that is just not something that we can responsibly pass out of our committee. That's kind of what we have going on in the drama department. So I think that's really it. If you have other bills you care about, let me know.
Yes, because we have a lot of them. Yes, Becca.
Thank you. Would you mind if we work together to come up with a good form email response for those?
Oh,
just
sure.
to because that is so helpful, because it is really, it would be very helpful to just come back with a good response to those. So that would be
Yes, I will do that. Thank you.
Because our job is to balance our business needs and consumer protection. And this bill, we hope once it leaves us, will do exactly that. Andy, transportation, and then to Jane.
Senate Transportation, we passed out the transportation bill today. We don't really have any other House transportation bills coming over that I know. So we're kind of wrapping things up in Senate Transportation, other than conference committees dealing with floor amendments on the transportation bill, things like that.
Oh, good. We have a lot of other things we can put you to work on.
Yes.
Starting as vice chair of the Appropriations Committee, the bill that came over from the House, I guess it was just last week, we're still going through the language. And so our plan, I know people are wondering, I'm lucky I have, 4 other committee chairs on the committee, which are really good contacts in terms of flow of information. We are going through the document as it was passed. I would say one thing that we're experiencing here, and so just to assure, all the bills that we passed crossover that carried money, which I would think would be the Senate priorities, are on our list. So I just want to make sure that people don't think that we have forgotten them. And we certainly had a major bill with 213 on the river corridors, another one with S310, another one with the pharmacy cost containment. However, the House is using the same revenue source for a different purpose, so those become an issue. The other thing that happened in the House this year is that they passed parallel bills. They built a budget based on the governor's box. The governor's box did not, as I've said before, include any increase, that it level funded our community-based service organizations, our mental health system, our youth services bureaus. Our courts are really suffering with their workload, the state's attorneys with all the homicides. So none of that has been addressed when you, in the House passed version of the budget. What they had was 2 other bills that are coming to both health and welfare and to the housing committees that carried an appropriation. It was a very different system. They passed the bills, they gave them to the tax committee before they went to appropriations. So what we have are bills that are actually expanding services or spending money, while from the Senate perspective and the discussions we've had, the budget did nothing to address key areas of underfunding. And so that is something that we are going to be looking at very carefully, how we, and some of the things that were in the governor's proposed budget got moved out into the housing bill. So we've got to figure out how we can bring them back in and what we bring back in. So the timeline for us to do all this relative to the work we had, and I guess people are saying, well, we need more time. We need more time. When we're dealing with this fiscal and financial and budgetary environment and tax environment, we have to work very quickly. And our plan is to at least get through the budget, review it by Friday. But we will be not taking a final vote on it until next week on Tuesday. So I know that there is huge appetite for spending and how we do that. But I think we're saying, what are we doing with those core governmental services and benefits that are really key to serving Vermonters? How we will deal with that, and then how we will look at what more we can take on. Certainly, we know the Education Committee passed out 2 bills that were important. One was literacy, because our kids are not at grade level, which is very, very distressing. And the other was our CTE position, which was included in the governor's budget, but pulled out by the House. So those, I think, are examples of where we're going to have a different priority relative to the work our policy committees took. So that's our timeline. I realize it's very short, but at this time, we have no choice. We're working against an adjournment deadline, and that is what is driving our deadline. And so it just means that this is the world that Anne and I are going to be dealing with in the next week or so, because if we're going to do anything to address those key areas like our justice system, and it's troubling, we have cases backed up, so we're not freeing kids who are in state custody for adoption. That, to me, is got to be one of the things that are very concerning. And so when we hear how justice is being backed up, how children are being kept in legal limbo, we have, and when we hear our state's attorneys, I met with mine, and she's practically in tears with the workload of the homicides. The governor's budget doesn't address any of that. So I'm just saying, this is where we're going to be coming from, and that is how we've taken the information, how we're going to prioritize. It doesn't mean that any of these proposals don't have merit. Everybody can argue why something has merit. It's just a matter of what is sustainable, what we feel, in fact, we have the revenues to support, and we're going to be building our budget the way we always do. So some of these bills, in fact, that maybe the House passed will end up being incorporated in the budget, because we are, like we do with the Senate priorities on spending, we've taken them out, we're looking at them, we're prioritizing them, and that's going to be the same with anything that's come over from the House. So we're not looking at those as separate bills. We're looking at them as an integral part of our budget development process. So I hope anyone has any questions or wants to ask me any questions, or Andy's the vice chair, Bobby's on the committee. So who else is unlucky enough to be on the committee?
Jen, when can we, when can committees expect you to give us, because you give us the infamous box that our committee has to work within. When will you be able to give, for example, Senate Economic Development, the box of, the amount we get to spend?
That's exactly why I'm trying to meet with the chair, because some of these could be one time and some could be base, and we have to be very careful about what we're building for base obligation. So we have a list of all the different ways. For example, VHIP was one of the ways of addressing housing by the governor, $6 million. The House pulled it out and had it travel in a different bill. So we're going to have to look at how we consolidate and look at those proposals and prioritize them. I would hope that by Thursday, we would have some sense of that. I will tell you, to do what we're doing, even to address core services, we're going to have to raise revenue. The House did not raise a dime for any of the purposes that I've talked about. I'm talking about as it relates to our justice system, our level funding of our community-based organizations. So all of that is something that we are going to have to address and ultimately give Anne a number of what we are going to need to deal with what we think are the highest priorities in the budget. So it's an unusual budgetary environment where we've had bills that carried large appropriations in the other body that went to Ways and Means before they went to appropriations. So we're just going to approach it the way we always do, and that is all the spending will have to be weighed. And we're obviously, everybody who wants any money wants to meet with us. So just because your committee may not have had a lot of, I will tell you, it's not that we're immune from advocacy for what is or is not, or what is of concern. So we will be trying to get as much input as we can. But from my perspective, the bills that we pass before crossover should be an articulation of the priorities of the Senate. And so that is one of the premises that, is first and foremost.
Agreed. But we haven't in all our committees. I mean, I am not sure every committee where that money is traveling separately has gotten to you, because there are appropriations I know coming up in workforce development, for example, that may not have gotten to or represented fully with you. So we obviously need to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think the big problem is if the workforce issues were not included in the House budget, where were they included? Or were they not included at all, like some of the other areas that I've talked about? And then how much have we got to put forward? And I will tell you, for example, the Serve, Earn, and Learn folks come in. That's a wonderful collaboration between multiple entities. Vermont Works for Women, Audubon, and the Youth Conservation Corps.
But they need to be viewed in a context.
Yeah. So that, and the one thing that I would say, and whether there has to be, just like the governor is the ultimate place that the administration budget gets, the Appropriations Committee has the difficult task of taking all the priorities from every other committee and looking at them in totality. So something that is, you might feel very passionate about has got to be sort of looked at against everything else. And the appropriations process is really that mechanism by which all of those thoughts, all of those requests have to be sorted out and prioritized. And as I've said, I'm popular in the fall, and by spring, I'm probably the most unpopular person in the building. But the only compliment I've had from people outside is they view that I'm fair. And so I think that that's the lens that, as chair of the committee, I will bring to this budget as we make some very difficult choices.
Much appreciated. Let's go to agriculture and then to Wendy for institutions, Chris and Ann next.
Yeah, thank you, Jane, for explaining our work. It's unreal what we actually go through in appropriations. We're always short money and blessed with requests.
Come forward a little so we can see you on the
There
screen.
I am.
Great.
But anyways, in ag, I'm glad to be here. We've got about a half a dozen House bills that we're working on. Right to repair is, I think, coming along where it's it'll give people more ability to repair their own equipment and won't be detrimental to the manufacturers that supply the equipment. So that bill's coming along. Probably the most difficult bill that we have is the neonic bill. We all are receiving from 20 to 50 emails a day from scientists, garden people, farmers, from everybody. And by a big majority, they want us to get the bill moving. So we're trying to find a happy medium that the farmers can live with, and get rid of the neonics down the road. And we have made this week a pretty dedicated week to dealing with that. And hopefully by next week today, we'll try to get to some spot where the farmers aren't yelling at us and neonic people aren't yelling at us. That maybe they're just sending us mixed messages. Well, you did well, you did bad, you did well, you did bad stuff. So, you know, if we can get half on each side mad at us, and we'll succeed. But we have a timber trespass bill that Senator Sears sent us to look at, where people are taking advantage, in most cases, elderly widows that got left some woodland. The husband has passed, and these people come in and soft soak them about how wonderful they are, but they've got this wonderful woods that should be harvested, and they're going to do this great job, and they go in and cut it, run with the wood, and leave it a mess, and leave them with their security gone. So those are the three rough ones. The state mushroom, you're going to hear more about that.
Maybe hopefully less.
That we had children in today to testify on that, and it's really amazing the experience and the education that these little guys got from their investigation. And so that bill should be up by the end of this week. And a chicken parts bill. It's been legal to sell whole chickens, but people at farmers markets haven't been able to sell wings and breasts and chicken parts, and that should be up later this week. So anyways, that's where we are.
Thank you. Would you be kind enough to pass it to institutions, to Wendy? Oh, we have questions. We have two questions. Martine.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Senator Starr, for your summary. I was wondering if the right to repair bill includes provisions for electronics, or is it mostly just limited to farm equipment?
Yeah, ag equipment and forestry equipment.
Okay, so it's that piece of it. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
We need to do the other things next year. And I think Chris has a question.
Sure, I have a question for Senator Starr. So, on the discussion,
Chris, can you come into the light?
yeah,
Thanks.
on neonics, we've been talking about the challenges of how they can be damaging to bees, et cetera. And then, but also on the farm side, it seemed as though the challenge was not being able to get seed that was untreated, or that had yield you could tolerate that was untreated, or that there was even varieties you wanted. Can you say something about how that's sorting out?
Not very well. The part about getting seed, if we had to do that right away, would be impossible. But New York passed a law that in 2019, then they aren't going to be using neonic seeds. And Quebec passed a law that they can't use it now, use neonics. But what we've been thinking about is going out like to 2022 or something like that. So it'll give it'll give us more time to see what's transpired in Quebec, maybe what's transpired in New York, and give the seed companies more time to develop a seed that the farmers can use that will be acceptable to both the bees as well as to the people that are using them.
Great.
So, but it's difficult if we started that right away, it would be disastrous. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Wendy, for institutions, and Anne, then Chris. Then we'll go to Martine for education, and whoever else. Great.
Okay, thank you. And I will be concise. The only separate bill that we have in the institutions committee is the Salisbury Fish Hatchery, which we're going to make sure that that stays open so that we can find alternatives to protecting the fish that are spawned or that are made in that hatchery. It's also historic. So if you want to see it, go see it soon. I'm going to try to go there this summer.
Field trip would be fun.
Yeah. And then capital bill, we've been working on the capital bill items since we began. We just received the capital bill from the House this past week, so we haven't delved into their proposal. Things that we've been talking about are stormwater, wastewater. Stormwater obviously was a good topic for this year, and just I would recommend at some point that stormwater and wastewater, the way that it's dealt with in institutions, be considered by other committees as well, because I do see a lot of overlap. And then, as you know, the House Institutions Committee is also the Corrections Committee. So they deal with the operations of corrections, not just the buildings. We do recognize that the buildings do have an impact on operations. And so particularly with the women's correctional facility, we're looking at a model from Maine, which is similar to a model from Norway, which is more of a honest corrections and not just a punitive system. It's trauma informed, and folks are supposed to be come out better than when they went in. And then cash has been a big issue. There's a cash fund now, you may know, in the capital bill. Instead of just relying on bonded money, we have had cash enter into that. And so what we do with the cash is very important, and a sense of that's something that we talk about a lot.
Thank you. Given the form letters we're getting on the women's prison, maybe we could work on a response that people could develop personal responses
Happy to.
That'd be great. Would you pass the mic to Finance, Senator Cummings?
Finance. Finance doesn't have a lot of bills yet. We are going to be focusing on the number that APROPS gives us. We've got some things to look at. I am planning on doing a cloud tax. The House, I think, has passed it 3 or 4 times. We've never done it. But that would go into the ed fund. So it'd be about $20 million extra dollars into the ed fund to help with the property tax situation till we can find something else. There's a lot of tax bills floating around, but they aren't in finance. They're attached to other bills. There's an income tax, creation of a new high bracket. There's a corporate tax. There's 2 proposals to the property transfer tax. I think that's it. The only tax bill we have is miscellaneous tax, and we're keeping them all in the pot. And when we see what we need to raise, then we can look at the whole thing. We're also looking at some fees. The miscellaneous tax is just that. There's 2 things you might hear about. The tax department is reducing some fees. There's a $15 late fee. Some of that gets late for your property tax, homestead filings. The tax department is doing away with 2 of those because they're so automated now. It just goes in, they have it out in a matter of hours, and they don't think they should charge a fee for time because it isn't there. But that will have some small impact on your local listers who get a share of that fee. The other one in miscellaneous tax, you might hear about is the state, and it's been in the works for a number of years, is taking over the valuation of utility transmission. That's the poles and wires. Right now, town listers are trained in home evaluation. Utility evaluation is a separate field. They either take, the state puts out one, or they have to hire a separate lister to do that. This isn't any of your hydro dams. It's nothing that produces. It's the poles and wires. We found out that there is some upsetment among some listers. Tax department has gone to all the listers meetings, but some see that as a usurping of their power, even though they have to hire it out. And there's an issue with their oath, but we're working on it. We think in the long run, the utilities are supporting it because right now they have 52 different evaluations of essentially the same pole and the same wire. And it would help the utilities just to have one standard valuation that went to all the towns. It's a system that crosses all town borders. So there's a reason to kind of bring it up to a state level. I think that's it. We have a utilities fee bill that's come over, telephone, looking at fees there. We just got it, and I think we're having our walkthrough today or tomorrow.
Right.
But that's it for us.
Thank you. Well, more to follow because there's
yes.
lots more to follow. Senator Bray, Chris, on natural resources and energy, and then we'll go to education.
Okay, great. So Senate Natural, really, as I mentioned, I think last caucus, we have two big areas, two big bills to work on. One is the Housing and Act 250 bill, and that is actually in essence, merging two Senate bills, S308, S311, and 687 from the House came over. That bill from the House was an outgrowth of the Act 250 Next 50 Years working group. That was roughly 5 years ago. There's also been work led by the NRB. We had different studies that came out of Act 47, S100 last year. So there are two streams converging, and that is there's a remodeling, rejuvenation of Act 250 for the long haul, while also empowering us to do more development, particularly focused on housing in, along the well understood smart growth principles. So we're aiming to put together a report with our Senate Economic Development colleagues so that 687, the House bill, will move back to the House with the Senate's language traveling through a report, and we'll ship that over. Also, it's got to go to the money committees. So we are in a full court press right now to have that out next week. The other thing that's in our basket is the Renewable Energy Standard, which we originally passed in 2015. It was ambitious. It was bold. It's been working well, but it's 9 years behind the times, and there's an opportunity to do better. So we'll be going next to that. And those are the two big bills that we are going to be focused on from here to the finish line, I think.
Terrific. Martine, any questions for Chris? Right. Oh, terrific. Thanks. I wandered around without my shoe.
Hi. So in Senate Education, we are still grappling with PCBs. We have a PCB bill that came over from the House that is a combination of drawing down funds that currently exist with a potential pause, but we're working on that TBD. School construction, there is a bill that we will be digging into a little bit more around school construction, as well as a BOCES bill. Does anyone know what BOCES is? BOCES is more of a, it exists over in New York State and in many other states, but it's a sort of a consolidation of regions of a state to provide services that could be used, outside of like a district. So we are excited about that. It's got potential to save the state money and to increase efficiencies, which is always great. So we'll keep you posted on that. Of course, we have the hearing with the governor's appointee to Secretary of Education coming up on April 23rd. That's a big deal. And we have a miscellaneous ed bill that includes a provision that seems a little bit complicated that we'll be digging into around adult ed versus high school completion and GED. So we'll be working on that. Any questions? Yes. Yes, Senator White.
Thank you, Senator Gulick. Are you discussing the Secretary of Education this week or next week?
The hearing is the 23rd, from what I've been told, and I don't believe we're having any discussions ahead of time, not that I know of anyway. Yeah. Great, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, I just next, what? GovOps. Where is our chair and our vice chair? They're neither of them here. It is on. Thanks. Yes, GovOps. We've got lots of bills we're wrestling with. We're wrestling with a tax abatement bill. We're wrestling with. They've all gone out of my head, other than the tax abatement bill.
Extension of the April 15th deadline till November 15th on the telemedicine.
Then we should chat.
Yes.
Right. Right. Yes, you can say, man, we have 2 more minutes.
I just saw on the news, and you may have already seen this, but it looks like Goddard College will be closing after this semester. And the name of the game is declining enrollment. We're seeing it in our colleges and we're seeing it in our school system as well. So it's something for us to be focused on and thinking about. How are we going to deal with this declining enrollment? What are we going to do? It seems as though the state's going to have to make some hard choices in the future to grapple with this. But I was sad to see that in the news just now. Goddard College.
Oh, God. Yes, Goddard and the state colleges. However, I don't think Middlebury is declining enrollment. I don't think Bennington is. I don't think our own University of Vermont is. I think it's our state college as a State University of Vermont and Goddard in particular, and some of the really small ones. Becca, do you want to do a brief update on Senate GovOps, and then we need to wrap up?
Okay, Senate government operations. We've all agreed we cannot remember what bills we are working on just yet because we're working on a lot. The House sent us like 10 plus bills. We are working on Veterans Month, which would be November. That's the same month as Veterans Day. We have the tax abatement bill, tax sales, which would be looking at how Vermonters who are experiencing tax sales, clarifying and I would say making more for our towns as well, making it more clear for them what the process would be to help people in that situation and to help towns from being stuck with properties that are blighted that they have to manage themselves. Truly cannot remember any of the other bills we are working on.
I can't either, but let's pivot to House Judiciary.
Oh, look at that.
I mean, Senate Judiciary, and Senator maybe could come towards us so that he can be seen by the camera. You arrived just in time.
I guess so. Well, thank you.
A little bit forward. You can. I'll bring your chair.
I don't need a chair. Okay. So, well, I don't know where to begin. Senate Judiciary has several House bills, one dealing with auto theft and one dealing with retail theft. And perhaps the most complex one deals with sealing and expungement, which is something we've been dealing with, seems like forever. We keep passing bills that the governor doesn't like. And so hopefully this year we'll all sing Kumbaya and have a bill that both the administration, the House and the Senate can support. We got a few other House bills there deal with sexual assault and coercive and controlling behavior and things like that.
And funding the judiciary, funding the state.
Well, I'd say that's appropriations.
But it's your bill.
Well,
Jane happily mentioned it.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we remember the GovOps bills.
Yes.
Thank you, Senator Sears. We had
You're welcome.
forgotten them prior. Your great conversation about Senate Judiciary sparked again what we need to talk about, which is an immigration status bill for licensure. So if you, we have an Office of Professional Regulations bill. We also have a bill around foster care youth and those in DCF who have access to their records. We heard that it's very difficult to access your records right now. And then we have an ethics bill that came over from the House as
and the
well.
municipal ethics
And
bill, right?
yeah, municipal ethics. And the Truth and Reconciliation Council. So we have a lot of bills.
We have a lot. And on that note, we're going to, we have our Vermont Edition star has just returned, but we are going to take up health and welfare at our next meeting. And we will see you all next week at 12:15, where we are going to be doing voting a new third member to the Committee on Committees. Pro Tem, do you have anything you want to add? Okay, no. Well, in a word. So thank you very much. Goodbye.